So I know we're all familiar with Shakespeare's plays, but a lot of people don't know how creators use his plays for inspiration for their own books, films, and movies and stuff like that. And so I feel like one big one is Disney. So like Disney movies like The Lion King is based off of Hamlet. And so I feel like The Tempest really influenced the movie The Little Mermaid. And so a lot of people have seen this popular movie where The Little Mermaid, Ariel, when she's 15, she gets to go up and see the world outside of the ocean for herself, and the ship carries a prince, a 16-year-old prince, and the ship is wrecked in a storm, which is also similar to the shipwreck that happens in The Tempest, the storm that Prospero caused for the ship to wreck. And also, the Little Mermaid, Ariel rescues the prince, which isn't seen in The Tempest, but both characters fall in love with the prince, and both has a prince, like Ferdinand is the prince in The Tempest, and Eric is the prince in The Little Mermaid. So that's also kind of like a parallel or a similarity. And you can also see like throughout the plot, it's also The Little Mermaid is similar to The Tempest. And one difference though is that Ariel, the main character in The Little Mermaid, she's a female, but in The Tempest is a male character. So that's like the only, not the only, but one of the small differences that I could find. And I feel like, yeah, I don't know. But both, I feel like The Tempest influenced the creators to have it set in, not exactly like on an island, but also like in the ocean. But it also has some realism because it's, there's real people and there's a boat and everything, just like in The Tempest.
Right, so no, I agree with you on like a lot of what you said. I think that there's a lot of parallels that you can draw from, Ariel to The Tempest, and you can talk about, how so the book is called The Tempest and it's about under the sea. You can also talk about how Prospero's familiar, his name is Ariel, and Ariel, the Little Mermaid. And I believe another thing is the whole star-crossed lovers thing with like Miranda and Ferdinand is the same thing with Ariel and Prince Eric, right? Because, she has to like sell her voice to this evil person to be able to do anything. So yeah, I see like you can find some parallels and how definitely Shakespeare has influenced Walt Disney with that.
I agree with what you say, and also the presence of magic and also a storm like at the end to signify magic is a direct parallel to Shakespeare's Tempest, along with other plays such as Macbeth, when Shakespeare has the element of like thunder and lightning and like stormy weather to represent magic, like the climax of The Little Mermaid.
I agree with the similarities, and I also think that it's interesting that I never knew the Little Mermaid was based off of The Tempest.
And I also feel like in general, they both have the main ideas of like manipulation, power, and stuff like that.
So there's another movie called Frozen, and there are a few similarities between The Tempest and Frozen. They're both similar in controlling the weather, but there are other similarities, like when Prospero decides to forgive his enemies for what they did in the end, and in the same way Elsa decides to let it go, meaning that like she wants to let go of controlling her powers and embrace them instead. And it's just like when Prospero lets go of his anger towards his enemies. Another example is shown by the lyric, "The past is in the past," and that shows that Elsa believes that she should not focus on the past and instead on the present and the future. She should devote herself to the present. And that's similar to the Tempest because the past was where Antonio and Sebastian's bad memories were when the ship sank, but they decide to take advantage of the opportunity that the storm gave them and just devote themselves to the present like Elsa. And another example is the book Tempestuous by Kim Askew, and it was inspired by the Tempest. There are a few similar characters like Miranda and Ariel, but another similarity is that the main character of the book, Miranda, she was banished from her group of friends, and it's similar to when Prospero and Miranda from the Tempest were banished from Milan. And another example is that everyone in the story was stranded in the mall because of the winter storm outside, and it's similar to when everyone was stranded on the island. Lastly, both characters of both stories use trickery to get revenge on their enemies. Oh, and also Miranda from Tempestuous decides to take the opportunity of everyone being trapped to get revenge, and it's similar to Prospero, who uses the storm to get revenge.
I agree with everything you said, and also like the passes in the past. I also feel like Prospero was kind of just hung up on what his brother and his companion did to him in the past, and so like as you said, like Elsa in her past was kind of like rough since she didn't know how to like control her powers, and I feel like it really like there's a lot of similarity between that because then at the end they both let go of everything, like you said. And also the book, I also feel like the character names are similar if I remember correctly. Yeah. The two character names are also similar, so you can see where that stems from, and the like journey, I guess. So the Miranda in the book, she was stranded in the mall.
Yeah, they were all trapped.
Yeah, they were all trapped in the mall, and it was kind of like Miranda and the Tempest, where she and her father were banished to this island. So I see that similarity.
Yeah, like no, I agree with you in the way. I agree with you in the sense that the book has lots of connections and plot, and then how they use Miranda as the name and stuff. But I'm just gonna talk about Frozen, and so Elsa in the movie, I think personally is a lot like Prospero in the sense that they both have magic, which sounds like a really baseline thing to say, but it's true. And so they both have magic, and they both undergo like a very strong transformation from the beginning to the end of the book, right? So Elsa starts off as like scared and angry about stuff, and she's isolating herself and all that, and then at the end she's like, okay, so it's not that bad, I can make snow cones and stuff. And then with Prospero it's somewhat similar, like as in he starts off with like magical powers, he's angry, he's betrayed and everything, and then over the story progresses, he realizes, okay, my powers, maybe I shouldn't use them quite as evilly as I am right now, and he's like, okay, I'll be a better person. So in that sense, I believe the two movies are alike.
Yeah, I agree with you saying that Elsa is Prospera. Like, for instance, Elsa believes she is protecting Aahana, whatever, by like being separate from her and separating herself from society, while Prospera thinks he's protecting Miranda by keeping her on like an island. Separated, yeah. Separate, okay, yeah.
Shakespeare has definitely had a huge influence over modern movies and books.
Yeah, so I'll go. I'm gonna talk about the movie interpretations of Tempest because I don't know if you guys know, but there were two different remakes of the movie Tempest. Like it's not like parallels, it's like the straight up movie that they took from Shakespeare. And so there's one movie that was, in 1908. It was, again, really early on to the movie era. Like, there was no CGI. There was, like, none of that. When I watched that movie, how long was it? I think it was, like, 11 minutes, roughly.
Yeah.
And it was, like, the shortest thing ever. And it was just this one place that they recorded with different people. And the thing about that I suppose I can stretch it and say I enjoyed. I thought it was cool how in Shakespeare's time, like if you think about it, that's probably how it would have looked. Like there would have been this one place, like minimal props, and literally just a few characters coming back and like talking over and over again. So I feel like that was very interesting. I also found it really interesting that how one of the first few movies that they made, a Shakespeare one would be one of them. So obviously Shakespeare's book has had like an impact on, the modern world and everything. Then we have the 2010 movie. So granted, there was some like room left for interpretation in that movie as to like the plotline and the gender of the actors and everything. But like overall, I think it's like pretty safe to say that they did not a bad representation of the movie, and it like 61% of people liked it according to like Rotten Tomatoes or whatever. So yeah, I think I just personally like how not only is Tempest being like used in movies recently and like a while back, there's also like lots of interpretation room and like wiggle room. And I think it's nice that Shakespeare plays do that. Yeah.
Okay. I agree with that on just the large amount of interpretations, and because Shakespeare didn't really have like a lot of quote-unquote info about how it's going to be interpreted, a lot of the movies take like a different turn. Like the first known movie I'm pretty sure was in like 1908, which was what?
1888. I looked it up.
Oh gosh, did I get the date? Okay. But anyways, that movie is like, it has like some of the unlike the plays, it has different scenes which they had to interpret themselves and like modernize, because in original Shakespeare it was all taking place in a theater and there really wasn't any change in the scenes. So yeah.
I think it's interesting that they could fit the whole story of the Tempest into 11 minutes, and also that as time passed, the interpretation of Shakespeare of the Tempest has changed.
I also agree. I find it also, because like now I don't think, high schoolers like kind of dread Shakespeare, reading Shakespeare plays. But if you think about it, 20 years after the first film or movie was made and the first one, the 1908 interpretation came out, after 20 years, I feel like it's very impressive because of that, and that tells you how much impact it actually made, because it wasn't just thrown in the dust or just ignored, and it was actually made into a 11-minute film interpretation, and I feel like that speaks a lot for the major influence that plays had. So
Yeah, no, like again, I feel like the thing we're saying most is I agree, because it's practically indisputable that the Tempest has had, some kind of an impact at least. And something I definitely agreed with was what Carissa said about how the perception of the book and the perception of the acts and the plays in the movies changing throughout time. Like in the beginning, their level of interpretation, like the first movie we talked about, 1908, their level of interpretation probably wasn't as high as it is right now, considering they thought they could fit the Tempest into 11 minutes. So, given that, that maybe they did not read into it as much as, we do as, time passes and everything. See, nowadays, we have this long movie, we have tons of different ways that this has been, spread across society. And yeah, I think it's really neat. Perceptions have changed, and it's good that Shakespeare has had some sort of an impact on pop culture, like she said, like Elsa and Little Mermaid and all that stuff. I think it's really cool how Shakespeare did that. So.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the much more modern interpretation of Shakespeare in like an episodic format. Well, it takes place in Japan, and it's called Zetsuen no Tempest. Sorry for the butchering. Which is a Japanese TV series or anime and manga or like graphic novel series, which is mainly based on two Shakespearean plays. It's based off Hamlet and The Tempest. Like for instance, the main character is seeking revenge, as in Hamlet, along with the main character's best friend. Whereas the Tempest element comes from there being two witches, which each of them kind of represents Prospero, and the male witch is like insane and crazy and stuff, and he shows like the original like angry Prospero, whereas the second witch is much more agreeing and willing to help, showing like Prospero being reformed, and like the crazy one traps the not crazy one on an island along with the main characters, which is similar to the Tempest in that they're all like stuck on an island and they kind of got to use like the magic and stuff, and yeah, while there's still like an underlying romance plot between the witch and the guy's best friend, which is odd, but yeah. And it's pretty much just a modern interpretation for a modern crowd. Like for instance, instead of being like people in like, I don't know, their 30s and stuff, they have a bunch of teenagers in high school, because that makes sense.
I first of all feel like, I don't know, it's like really impressive that Japan made a TV series based on Shakespeare's play, The Tempest, because Shakespeare was in Europe and European immigrants went to America, blah blah blah. But I feel like that's very impressive because Japanese is like totally different language. So to see how they interpreted his play is impressive to me, and what they could do to it. So the fact that they liked his play so much that they made a TV series out of it, I feel like that really signifies the influence.
Yeah, I agree that it's impressive because it really shows the impact of Shakespeare on like books and stories and movies.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Something I liked, because I read both Hamlet and Tempest, and I think it's really neat. Multiple things are really neat about this, actually. This entire thing is cool. Really neat thing is that Japan put two English plays together and made it into a TV series that teenagers can enjoy. I also think it's a good thing, because even though I personally am not even the slightest fan of any anime or manga or whatever, I feel like a majority of teenagers are. So I feel like it's actually a really creative way to get, like the younger generation or whatever, to like understand and appreciate good literature. So I think, yeah. And I also think if a play from like one country on like the other side of the world is being noticed by like Japan, then obviously that play would have to have like a huge value to the world, So yeah.
Yeah, I think the fact that pretty much like there's so many different like interpretations across like multiple countries, it just shows the impact that Shakespeare's literature had with the Tempest, and to an extent like the rest of his other plays. Like there's dozens of American films, and then like you can even see like the Japanese film series I was talking about, which is made for like an audience of like teenagers, which is, like Aahana said, getting people together to like appreciate Shakespeare and to like well, just like know the literature, as it has the elements of the show. While it doesn't have the exact characters, it has like the plot, the ideas, and like once the kids like get older and like read it, they're gonna be like, hey, this is like the show I watched, so, and then they like read it and be like, oh, that's cool, or yeah, okay,
Cool.
woo.
Woo.